everyone, and welcome to the NAGDA National Retirement Security Week webinar. I'm Polly Scott, NAGDA's past president and also chair of the Participant Engagement Committee, and I'm glad that you joined us today. Before we get started with the presentation, I want to let you know about a few housekeeping items. First, please remain muted throughout the call so that the presentation isn't interrupted. And secondly, feel free to type in questions at any point during the presentation, and we will pause to answer them as we are able to. And we'll also have a Q&A period at the end of the presentation. To type in a question, simply locate the question and answer panel on the right side of your screen, type your question in the open area, and click Send to submit. The PowerPoint presentation for today's webcast has been posted to the NAGDA website. If you want to have a hard copy of the PowerPoint in front of you and have not yet downloaded it, you can access it on the NAGDA homepage at nagda.org and follow the link in the News and Events section located in the middle of the homepage. NAGDA couldn't offer the 2017 webinars without the financial support of our industry members, and our sponsors include Artisan Partners, AXA, Empower, ICMA-RC, Invesco, Lincoln Financial Group, Mass Mutual, Nationwide, Prudential, TIAA, VALIC, Voya, and the Siegel Group. We're grateful for the support of the industry sponsors that allow us to offer these webinars for free. And also a huge thank you to our National Retirement Security Week sponsors. Our diamond sponsors are Empower, NARP, Prudential, and our platinum sponsor is the Siegel Group. Our gold sponsors are ICMA-RC and Voya. As I mentioned earlier, I'm your moderator, Polly Scott from the Wyoming Retirement System, and we have Lori Rowley from the National Association of Retirement Plan Participants, also known as NARP. Lori is the co-founder and president of NARP. She has more than 25 years of experience in financial services and has started several research firms, including helping launch the Behavioral Finance Forum. Her expertise is in financial decision-making, research, operations, and managing large-scale, high-impact projects. And next slide, please. Our objectives on today's call are to share with you the work of the Participant Engagement Committee, give you an overview of the campaign and materials that we've been developing for National Retirement Security Week 2017, and also talk about implementation scenarios and opportunities. Before I turn it over to Lori, I just want to give you a little bit of a review of where NAGDA has gone with National Retirement Security Week. Last year, NAGDA enhanced their involvement with National Retirement Security Week, and we developed a united campaign that we were able to offer to all of our members to use with their participant base. And it was a very exciting project, and we think that it's going to allow us to magnify our message nationwide. This year's campaign wouldn't be where it is today without all of the outstanding individuals who've donated their time and energy to seeing it through. And the members of the Participant Engagement Committee are listed on your screen, and my thanks to all of them. So at this time, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Lori.
Thanks, Polly. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So thanks, everyone, for joining us today. And thank you, Polly, and to the entire engagement committee at NAGDA. It's been great to work with everyone and have everyone's input in developing this campaign. I just want to start off by saying please jump in and ask questions if at any point in the presentation that you have any questions, because I'm happy to have that as we go along. I just wanted to give a little bit of background on NARP in case people don't know who we are. So we are a nonprofit 501c3, and our mission really is to improve retirement savings outcomes for everyone. And one of the ways that we do that is by developing communication programs that are designed to change behavior and improve financial decision making. And one of the things that we've become good at, frankly, is approaching communication from an interdisciplinary approach, which means in practical terms that we're combining behavioral finance, communications theory, and human-centered design in a way that transforms communications to make them more relevant to the user. Because really what we're looking for is emotional connections that drive behavior change. And by being able to synthesize those three really well-developed fields or disciplines, we've been able to create communications experiences that have been able to drive behavior change. And that's really what our goal is. Next slide, please. So I just want to talk I'm just going to give a little bit of background on the campaign development and some of the strategy and thinking behind that. If we want to think about the mindset of the participant, that's how we always start off. Next slide, please. Understanding the mindset of the audience is critical when you're designing a communications campaign. So it really helps us understand where people are currently. And now, one of the challenges, of course, is that we're developing a campaign that can be used across multiple audiences, multiple demographics, different types of plans. But there still are some universal concepts that are true throughout retirement savings. And, we know these things based on our own studies that we do here at NARP. We've been doing them for years and years. And there's also many other studies in the industry that look at, how people feel about retirement savings. It tends to be a very stressful and anxiety-inducing topic for people, especially when people are already feeling other financial pressures. And an issue here that's important to recognize is that it's extremely hard to make rational decisions when we're under stress, because stress suppresses rational thinking. So we go right into our reptilian brain, and we're not able to have clear thinking around issues that we normally would be able to. So the question is, how do we work around these inherent stressors and anxiety points that are persistent within the context of retirement savings in a way that facilitates engagement? Next slide. So I want to talk about our strategic approach, and for this campaign, we have taken a strategic approach that is grounded in storytelling. So I'm just going to borrow some information here from Daniel Kahneman, the Nobel Prize winner in behavioral economics. He has a technique that he has used to get around this issue of stressful thinking. So how do we work around that? And his way is something that he calls prospective hindsight. Or another way to think about it is a pre-mortem, as opposed to a post-mortem, looking at something after it happened. Look at something before it happens. Then you can try to figure out what could happen in the future so that you can make a plan for what's going to happen or what needs to happen when you're not under stress. So we're leveraging the time now when we're not under stress to think about what are these different things that could happen, and we're thinking about it more in a contemplative state of mind so that we're not forced to make these decisions in stressful moments. So we've used this concept as a strategic pillar within this campaign. It's really grounded in storytelling. That's great. Go right ahead, Tracy. And the idea behind it is this approach will allow us to shift the tone in a way that helps reach out to people and engage them. So we really want to shift the tone from one of fear to optimism. We want to de-stress people when they're thinking about this. And we want to evolve retirement savings and financial decision-making in general to a way that's more tangible and relatable, and really deepen the understanding that people have around how their financial decisions and actions they take today will impact them in the future. Next slide. This is my little design to talk about how the emotional motivators really are the triggers for saving behavior. So we're looking to really engage people at the emotional level. That's where the decisions come from. Not the tactical level, like, oh, because we know we can say to people all the time, you need to save retirement, it's super important. We know that, but we can kind of dismiss it. But when you make the emotional connection, that's when you get deeper engagement and deeper behavior change. Next slide, please. So this is the result from, I just want to talk about evidence for a minute, because it's important. We have to make sure what we're recommending is grounded in results. And so this is the result that we had last year from the campaign. This shows the deferral increase and the new enrollment increase as a result of using the campaign. So this is compared to National Retirement Savings Security Week the year prior. So it's just for that period of time. And you can see when they used the campaign that we're going to be talking about today, they were able to get these kinds of increases. There's a case study that has been developed on this particular plan and what they did, and that is available. Maybe some of you saw it earlier, a few months ago. I think it was sent out to everyone. I do want to make one cautionary comment here, which is I know that in the industry there is this real interest in having hard measurable data in terms of how deferral increases and savings increases, and those things are very important, and I agree with that. But there's also something else I want to challenge us with, which is relying too heavily on that data for the immediate behavior change, because really what we're talking about is a shifting of mindset, and that's a harder thing to do, and it takes a longer period of time. But what we're really trying to do is introduce a new way of thinking about financial decision making that will help have a more lasting effect throughout the person's life and their future financial decisions, as well as their financial decisions today. So I would challenge people to think about how do we sort of start to measure and think about the emotional mindset factors in addition to the actual measurable outcomes. Next slide. So now I'm going to launch into the campaign. I'll talk about sort of what the campaign looks like and the strategy behind it, and then how to use it. And please jump in and feel free to ask questions at any time. Next slide. So you can see that the campaign is called Your Whole Story. And what we're doing here is really trying to put the focus of the education and the communications materials on the person. We're trying to engage them and provoke them into thinking about their own story, because that's really a starting point for financial decision making. So just as a side note, one of the writers that helped us with this campaign, who works here with us at NARB, who is the former head writer of Apple, has a saying, which is, the most important word in communications is you. So it's important to make anything that we're doing relevant to the user, or it's going to be hard to engage them, particularly when you think about this time and place that we're in with so many forms of media and content coming at people. How do you break through all of that and get people's attention? And that's really something that we're trying to do with this campaign. Next slide, please. So just quickly, the distribution channels for the campaign materials. We realize that one of the important factors in making this a campaign available to all of the NAGDA members is that there are varying opportunities for distribution. So some people have, email available, other people do not. Some people prefer printed materials, some people are hybrid. So we've tried to make the materials accessible through multiple distribution channels. And I'm going to talk about those in a few minutes. But I just wanted to orient people to, we're going to be showing sort of print versions of them when I walk through, but we also have other digital versions of them available. And all of the materials have been made to be available just sort of as generic versions, so you can just use it as is and send it out. But we've also allowed another version of the materials that are customizable, so that you can put in specific plan information if you'd like, or your logo, or other important information that you think is relevant in a call to action. And I just want to say one thing here actually on I'll just go back once again on the printed versus the digital. I know that everybody, of course, wants to use email as much as possible, which is great, but I don't want to have everyone dismiss the idea of print. We have found from some of the studies that we've done with our academic partner, Poonam Teller from Dartmouth, that when people have printed messages, they stay longer with people because you actually have a tangible piece of information that you can put in your pocket, you can share it with people, you can keep it, so it serves as a visual reminder, whereas digital messages evaporate much quicker and they're much quicker to ignore and not come back to because there is no artifact of them. So that's just a comment on distribution channels. In terms of the campaign materials themselves, there are three main, sections of the campaign. So the first section is, sorry Tracy, go back to the campaign materials. I'm going to go over engagement, daily 5, and the age targeted. So there are three main components of it. So the first part is what we're calling an engagement piece. And this is a retirement journey map. I'm going to talk about that in just a second. The part of the engagement piece from our perspective, from a strategic point of view, is that we want to give people a piece of information that isn't forcing them or requesting them to make an immediate call to action. So trying to just engage people into a thought or a conversation about their financial life. The Daily 5 are a set of flashcard style tips that we have made to address some of the most relevant topics in retirement savings. And new to the campaign this year are some age-targeted guides that are made and designed to address some of the major activities that one should be doing at different stages in their life. Next slide, please. So I want to talk about the journey map for a minute. We can go right to the next slide that shows the journey map, please. I want to talk about the behavioral principles that we're addressing in this piece. So this is we have this in several different formats on the website, but and it's a little bit hard to see in this format of the webinar, so I apologize. But think of it as like a map that would unfold kind of like a traditional map would. And what we're doing here, I want to talk about the behavioral principles because it's not just something that we've designed to be like a cool piece of material. It actually is doing some heavy lifting for us in behavioral finance. So we know we all have a very difficult time imagining our future selves. I'm sure that everybody in this industry has heard about this discussion about future self and how do we get people to connect to it. So in one sense, we all know that we're getting older, but very few of us have the capacity to really imagine what that's going to mean. So it's very easy to ignore the future, and it's hard to think about your life in the long run, right? We have a very hard time imagining that. And part of that is imagining how our actions today connect to and impact our life 20 or 30 years from now. So what we're attempting to do in this piece is to provoke people into thinking about their own journey, both their life journey and how long these different parts of people's lives are going to be, and to think about how their financial decisions are really connected to where they want to be. And so the other thing that we're doing here is we're trying to use some visual design to educate people on longevity. So instead of talking about the word longevity, we've just basically displayed how long that section is of your life after you stop working and go into retirement. And then you can start to visualize and think for yourself, like, wow, my retirement is almost as long as my career, and I'm going to need money to live on. So we're letting the visual design do some heavy lifting in the behavioral finance department for us without having to explicitly say those messages like, you know, there's a longevity risk and you need to save more money. We're inviting the person to come to these decisions on their own by giving them visual cues and also copy that will help engage them into realizing these issues on their own. Next slide, please. It's a blow up. The next slide is a blow up of sort of where you are in your journey. So how we're doing this in this format is we're asking people questions. When we pose a question to someone, you know, let me just back up for just a second and say, oftentimes in retirement savings and financial decision making, the voice and the tone is telling people what to do. And people don't really like to be told what to do. So by switching the conversation and engaging people, where are you in your story, what's going on in your life, it invites them into a conversation with themselves about their own finances and what they need to be doing. And as I said before, you can see that the map doesn't have any calls to action. It's really designed to build trust, and engagement with no scary questions, no math, and no calculators. I have to take a sip of water. And then, of course, we're not promoting or offering any products, which isn't a bad thing. But the reason that we deliberately are just keeping this simple is so that people don't feel any kind of pressure. And in terms of the graphic design and layout, we use these sort of elements throughout all of our pieces so that people can start to have an identity around this campaign. Functionally, these pieces are all available in slightly different sizes and formats, and they're all available for customizable information. Next slide, please. So these are the field notes for your journey. So the context, of course, is storytelling, and instead of calling them flashcards, we're calling them field notes. These are, let me just go to the next slide. These are really bite-sized pieces of information that that help people sort of, in a very playful form, you can see with the imagery that we have selected. They're really designed to engage people with really light information that's provocative because it's something you wouldn't expect to see. We're trying to make it a little bit unexpected as a visual lure to pull them in. One of the interesting communication and behavioral theory concepts that's at play here with these flashcards is that we know when we give people too much information, especially around financial decision making, they go right into overload and they kind of shut down. So one of the nice things about using this form of the flashcard and keeping them sort of light and whimsical with the design is that we're delivering little bite-sized pieces of information that are easy to remember because they have nice visual cues that go along with them. And so these typically can be delivered in any way you want. They're available in print and digital format. And typically what would happen for a plan sponsor, what we're recommending is that you can choose from a number of different formats or topics and send them out either by email or print or whatever, social media, whatever works for you on a daily basis for every week of National Retirement Savings Week. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. If we can go to the next slide, it'll be an example of another field note. This one is the easy way to save more. About auto-escalation. You can see the magenta or pink color that is on the slide is where you can customize your call to action and put in your own logo and put in additional plan information if you'd like to do it there. Next slide. This shows all of the icons from the field notes. You can use these icons to design your own web pages and content and material. All these images are available as accessories in the plan sponsor website for National Retirement Week. You can see that they all sort of have a cohesive look and feel, but they're very playful. Next slide, please. Next slide. So these are the new messages for 2017. I want to spend a little time here. Sorry, the images are a little blurry in this PowerPoint. I apologize. In real life, they look very pretty. These are tips of what to do at different life stages. So again, we know that it's hard, it's very difficult to create sort of universal messages. So we have taken our best shot at sort of addressing some of the really important topics that people need to be focused on at different stages in their life. Can we go to the next slide? I've blown up an example of what one of these looks like, and it's in the form, if you want to think of it as a greeting card. So you would open it up. On the front panel, we have an attention capture. We try not to use the word savings or retirement in our attention capture because people sort of have a mindset of what that's going to say. So we try to make it something a little bit more engaging. And so that's the black panel is always the first piece of the greeting card. If you open it up on the inside left, you will see an answer to this question: overwhelmed by retirement savings, the secret to conquering is to do something. And then on the right side, we have some imagery, an image and some other tips that you can do to help yourself at that point in your life in terms of your retirement savings journey. These are broad concepts, again, because of the audience that we're attempting to serve. But also one of the things that we know from our research is that people don't know what they're supposed to be doing or what everybody else is doing. So it's a way of normalizing behavior for people. And it's also and that gets into behavioral finance a bit too, about herding and sort of normalizing behavior. People want to do the right thing, they just don't know what it is to do, and they look for social cues to help inform their financial and the other decisions that they're making. And so these pieces have been designed for that. They also are customizable. Next slide, please. So this next section, I'm going to talk about how you access the materials. I'm just going to hit on it lightly, and then I encourage you to go to the NAGDA website where this is being hosted and look at them. But we'll go to the next slide. So NAGDA has made these all available. I've sort of outlined, this is what the plan sponsor site looks like. So you would go to your whole story. You can download all of the different materials. You can see on the slide where we have the journey map, the field notes, social media design elements, other accessory designs where you can use the imagery, and then the new targeted messaging campaign. Next slide. This is a blow up of what happens. You click on these to download the materials. Pretty self-explanatory. Next slide, please. When you click on one of these, this will take you to a site that looks similar to this. So it has, you can see at the top it has generic, so everything on the left column would be the generic version, which means it's just sort of print ready and you can download it. The customizable side is always on the right-hand side, and that's true for all the materials throughout the campaign, I believe, on the website. So you would choose if you're doing the generic version or the customizable version. Next slide, please. This is the participant version of the NAGDA website. So these are all of the field notes. We will also have the new targeted pieces on here. They weren't available when I did the screen grab, but they'll be included as well. And a video will be included here that Scott Dingwall's been creating. I'm doing a great job. And people, when you click over these images, they'll highlight and you can read sort of the front and back of the card simultaneously, and you can refer your participants and other people to this site. Next slide, please. When you click on one of the images on the participant site, this is what it blows up into, and you can see this. It also has social sharing down at the bottom so that you can send this out on your social networks if you have them available. Next slide, please. So I thought it might be helpful to put together some usage tips. So I'd like to show what it looks like as an email campaign for those of you who might be interested in using that. If we could go to the next slide. We have formatted the cards in HTML format as one of the downloads that's available to you. So this is kind of what it would look like if you're looking on a pad or a tablet, which is nice for the HTML email because we know that so many people are looking at their mobile devices when they would be looking at these emails, and so they really lend themselves nicely to this kind of distribution channel. Next slide, please. And here's what it could look like as an email that was sent out. I just mocked this up into an email of what it could look like when you send it out. And you can put in your own messages there too if you would like, about your own plan, etc. Next slide, please. So just things to think about when you're doing a campaign. I know that some people can have, they themselves, the plan sponsor, will send out the email directly to participants. So that could go out as an HTML formatted email. It could also be PDF as attachments if you don't have the technical capabilities to do HTML. I think that'd be preferred, but we have a saying, don't let good be the enemy of perfect. So if you can't do it, let's use a PDF. You can send those out as attachments as well. If your plan provider or record keeper wants to send it out, they could send it out to current participants and maybe even a list of eligible non-participants for targeted messages. Can we go to the next slide, please? Which is determining the audience. I know that this is different for many of you, but if you have demographic information, you could make a campaign that targets certain demographics and curate special field notes based on those demographics. And for non-eligible participants, same kind of thing. You can demographic targeted messages and then curate those notes designed towards those non-participants if you have that information available. A lot of people don't, and so I think it's fine just to send out, generalized information. But if you do have the ability to have any targeted data on participants like age, for example, I think that could be a helpful way to target more messages toward relevant audiences. Next slide. I give an example of an editorial calendar, which the first one is not age-related. The second one is. These are just suggestions of things that you could do and messages that might resonate with those audiences. Things to think about when you're designing your email campaign and a social media campaign if you're going to do one, which will, of course, determine the timing and the frequency. So when do you want to send these things out and how often? One thing I'll tell you that I know from our own work that we do here at NARP, and I've included it in this editorial calendar, is that we know that a lot of people look at financial information on the weekends. So depending on what your, where you're employed and what your job is and what your role is, people might not be looking or having time to look at these things either during the week or on the weekend. So I want us to try to think about the weekend time as well as an opportunity to send out these messages. And of course, having email services help send these out is very helpful because you don't have to go in the office. You can just preset it to set it out automatically. Just as a point of reference, most of the traffic that we have on our website for NARP, where we provide financial education and information, happens on Sunday morning. So we have a big spike in usage on Sunday morning, just as a thought. Okay, next slide, please. Other things to think about when you're doing your email campaign, of course, sorry, this is a little bit of a repeat, but also think about maybe building promo and rewards into looking at the content or doing activities. I know that this might seem small, but there really is a lot of evidence to suggest that small little rewards for behavior are very motivating. And so we have made a whole set of sort of accessory mock-ups that are available on the site that you could do something that's really simple, like a pin or a tote bag, whatever, just so that people kind of reinforce that they're doing good behavior. As a side note, Dan Ariely, who I'm sure a lot of you know, his work in behavioral finance has done a big study where they looked at a number of different motivators for savings, and one of the ones that has the most impact in terms of people saving the most and sticking to their savings is when they had some sort of tangible representation that they had done something good. So they got a reward, basically. In this case, it was a fake gold coin that he used. But so there is a lot of evidence to suggest that that helps people motivate themselves. Next slide. I just want to talk about social media and tips for a social media campaign. Go to the next slide, please. Again, we've sort of mocked this up into what these could look like using different levels of social media. The nice thing about the field notes and the retirement map is they really are highly visual, and that really lends itself well to these types of distribution channels. Next slide, please. So my way to think about social media is really to establish what kind of campaign you want and on what platform and what the objectives are. So on Facebook, we have images that you can use to maybe do to put the campaign imagery on your Facebook page. You can update the site daily with messages. Twitter, same thing. We suggested some hashtags that you can use. Again, the timing of how often you can send these out is interesting to think about. Two things I want to talk about are Instagram and Pinterest, which may not seem relevant in the world of retirement savings, but I want to tell you something about these two forms of social media that I found very interesting in doing our own research on these topics, is that 80% of Pinterest users are women, and they're women under 40. And that tends to be a hard demographic to target in retirement savings. And Pinterest and Instagram has a similar kind of demographic. And so it's interesting to think about how we could use these images to help reach out to those larger audiences. Next slide, please. One of the things I would sort of say to think about is establish what your objectives and metrics would be. So if you were using any of these types of social media, what is the result you're trying to get? Likes, shares, follows, etc. And how are you going to measure that? And it might be a good start of building a social media awareness for your plan as well. A good opportunity to kind of launch that. Next slide, please. There's a social media editorial calendar, again, same type of thing. I think it makes it easier to think about these things in advance so that during the week of National Retirement Week, you have the information all queued up and ready to go. Again, with the tone and the messaging, and here's just some examples of the types of messages that you could send out. And of course, I've just chosen a section of them, but there are more messages. You could do 2 a day if you wanted. That's fine. And also don't feel like you shouldn't resend these things out. So with social media, you can post them multiple times. And next slide, please. This is what it would look like on the next slide. Yeah, this slide. If you send it out on Twitter, I've just mocked it up into our own Nara Twitter account so you can see what that would look like in your own Twitter account. And next slide, please. We have set up this year a Pinterest board with all of the content already loaded. We have them as static digital images like this. We've also converted them all to GIFs. So it's an animated message. So what's nice is that the field notes will actually flip like a flashcard. So those are really playful and fun to look at, especially when they're animated. Those will also be all available on the website. Great for attention capturing on social media. And for anybody who isn't really able to fully, send out a large campaign for National Retirement Savings Week, the Pinterest board would really be a very, very easy, zero time and effort and money way to do it. You could just click on one of these images, social share it to whomever you want, and you're done. So this is also a good way to think about it, and it's a really easy way to engage with the campaign if you don't have a lot of resources to share. Next slide, please. This is an Instagram example of what it would look like. You could send these messages out on Instagram. Again, highly visual. It is the visual go-to for visual storytelling, and it's pretty much the 18 to 30, early 30-year-olds that are using this, and that's a good way to reach some of those younger savers. So that concludes my portion of the presentation. I'm going to hand it back over to Polly, and if anybody has any questions, feel free to jump on in and ask either, I guess, type it in the Q&A, but I'll hand it over to Polly. Thank you.
Thanks, Lori. That was a really great walkthrough of all that we have developed for this year and how we've expanded your whole story. We don't have any questions that have come through so far, and so we're still extending the offer for questions at any point. Go ahead and launch into a few conclusionary slides, but don't want to cut off the opportunity for comments, questions, or we'd love to know what the audience is thinking, in general. But it's getting exciting because the Senate resolution that NAGDA initiates has started to move through the process of getting made official through Congress. Senator Cardin has agreed to sponsor the resolution again this year. We're waiting to hear from Senator Enzi. We do anticipate he will be sponsoring it, and NAGDA very much appreciates the support of Senator Cardin and Senator Enzi. The language in the Senate proclamation that we have submitted to the sponsors has not changed from last year. So if you're like my plan and you need to work ahead in order to get your local resolution passed, in my case it's by the governor of Wyoming, there's no problem with that. You can go ahead and do that. We anticipate the resolution will be passed in late September around the time of the NAGDA conference. The proclamation designates the week of October 15th through the 21st for National Retirement Security Week 2017, but I wanted to share with everyone that time frame is a little problematic for the Wyoming retirement system because of other obligations that we have as an organization. So we're going to move the week to the following week and push out our campaign a week later. And I know I've heard other plans over the years tell me that sometimes there are some idiosyncrasies that make the exact timing of the week difficult, and it's fine to adjust as you need to for your organization. And the campaign materials lend themselves to use throughout the year. And I know some plans that actually turn the week into a month, and they have events the whole month of October. So local license like that is not problematic at all, and everybody should take advantage of that. Next slide, please. In Wyoming last year, we, along with Senator Enzi and our governor, Matt Mead, last year we engaged all of our local state legislators and offered them that they could sign on to the resolution supporting National Retirement Security Week. And last year we had 18 of our state legislators sign on, and this year we think we'll get even more. And it's just another way to elevate awareness and bring kind of more excitement to the event. Next slide, please. As Lori has explained, Your Whole Story for 2017 adds in age-targeted messages. And we're also going to have an upbeat peer-to-peer video featuring real participants from our plans, and that's being produced by Scott Dingwell, and it'll be available soon on the website. As Lori said, the plan sponsor page of the website already has the age-targeted messages on it. The participant page of the website, that update is following, and it'll be there shortly. For my plan at the Wyoming Retirement System, we're going to use the age-targeted messages in our week-long email and social media campaign, and we're going to incorporate the weekend into the campaign just for the reasons that Lori said, that we think our members are online more on the weekend than during the week. And I'm excited to tell everyone that this year our record keeper, which is Empower, is going to partner with us. They're going to do all the customizing of the materials for us, and they're also going to drive the email campaign. So shout out to Empower, and I know that your record keeper can help you as well. Empower's better at segmenting emails by age than we are, and so we're going to share with them some key data on the eligible population, because they don't have that. They're going to marry that up with the participating population and be able to push out an age-segmented campaign. So I encourage all of you to check with your industry partners about that. I also wanted to let everyone know that I think the greeting card for people over 50 adds an element to our content that's for pre-retirees that wasn't part of the campaign last year, and I think it'll work really well for participants. Here in my plan, we do have a population that's skewed more towards the pre-retirees. And so we're going to take advantage of that greeting card and customize it to link in some additional material that we have for pre-retirees, and we're excited about that. And we're also going to repeat some of our favorite field notes from last year and use the Savings Journey Map. And I think the campaign, kind of like what we're planning to do, will probably work well for a lot of plans, and would love to hear more about what you're thinking and you know, how you're going to structure your events. And with that, I think if we go to the next slide, I guess the only thing left to do is to still encourage more questions, because we haven't had yet. And that's not like nag the people. Nag the people use questions.
Polly, perhaps we would just go through, Polly, that, you know, people don't have questions. But I would encourage anybody, I'll just say, if anybody has any additional questions when you go on and look at the site, or if you want to contact me directly, that I'm happy to answer any questions that might come up later as you're thinking about this more as it gets closer to implementing.
Yeah. Thanks, Lori. But I think that's about all the prepared remarks we had for you today. Really look forward to, Holly, it does look like we have a few questions over in the right bottom part of your screen. So we've got a question asking if we can get the GIFs without using Pinterest.
Yeah, we're going to load the GIFs onto the website. We're still in the process of making them, and we didn't have them all completed in time for today to show you all. But the GIFs will be available on the NAGDA website. We just put them on. We just will have them on Pinterest too for people that just don't want to download them and go through that whole exercise. But yeah, absolutely, they look great too. I can't wait to show them to everyone.
We also have a question asking, should we ask our representatives to co-sponsor the legislation? I guess I'll have to probably follow up with a formal answer on that. I think that happened last year where some people in the House, some members of the House of Representatives wanted to sign on to the resolution. And although we really welcome the support, I guess it was problematic from a procedural point of view, and so that did not work out. So I would like to follow up with all of you after checking with our lobbyist, Susan White. I don't know that it lends itself to that process because it's a little bit of a different process for a resolution as opposed to a regular piece of legislation. Sorry, I don't have a definitive answer, but I think that doesn't work, basically, is my answer, but I love the idea, and we'll have to check with our lobbyist, Susan White, about it. Okay, we have another question. It says, I'm curious as to how many plan sponsors are working with government officials, governors, state legislators, mayors, et cetera, to have the National Retirement Security Week proclamations issued this year? Yeah, good question. We're always interested in that as well. And I'm under the understanding that most plans do get a local resolution for the event because it adds to the excitement. Most of the other plans I've networked with over the years have let me know that they do that type of thing as well. Tracy, do we have an official count? No, I don't think that we do. But to your point, Polly, we'd love to hear from folks if you are having that done. And Polly, going back just to the question that we had around getting co-sponsors, the person asking the question clarified that they were referring to their senators in their state. Oh, the state legislature. That's totally your call, and we found that it has been additive for us, and we're going to continue to do it. And I think it's worth the effort. It's not very much effort, and it adds a lot of buy-in. And I see another question that says, how can a plan with very distinct branding have cohesion with the NAGDA campaign ideas? Yeah, really good question. You know, a couple of different ways to think about that, and Lori may be able to chime in on this as well, but I think you can think of it as your guest speaker for the year. If you have a very cohesive campaign with all the, cohesive graphics and a very distinct look and feel all year long, just think of this as your guest speaker for the year where you're going to do something different for a week. And I think it will be very engaging and work well for your participants. Lori, did you have anything else to add?
No, I think that's a great way to sum it up. But the thing that's nice about that too, Polly, is that if you do have an existing branding, which is great for your plan, having something new is kind of makes it a little fresh from it. It's a nice little attention grab for your participants. So it's a way to kind of infuse a little bit of vitality into that and kind of reestablish the value of the plan at the same time.
Good. Now I am starting to see some questions come on the screen, which I couldn't see them.
Which I wanted to just, something that came up last year that I didn't hit on this year, I just want to say that the materials have all been approved by FINRA, so they all fit within a completely compliant regulatory framework.
Right. And also, the materials are not copyrighted, but they are intended for use with National Retirement Security Week, and they're freely available on NAGDA's website for everyone to use. So that was a question that just came through, is the material copyrighted? Tracy, do you want to, now I'm seeing a lot of questions come in. Do you want to?
I think we've gotten most of them asked. I see one that just came in asking if U.S. senators are welcome to co-sponsor the resolution.
Right, and that is where I am not sure how well that would work for the resolution process. So I'd like to check with Susan White, and we'll have Tracy send out a follow-up response to everybody who was on the webinar today. I guess there's another question about the name of the week, the National Retirement Security Week. We have changed the name. So 2 years ago, this will be the third year that it's National Retirement Security Week as opposed to National Save for Retirement Week. And the intention of the NAGDA board in adjusting the name was to make it more inclusive of people who are in the spend down phase of retirement as well as the accumulation phase of retirement. So the name is National Retirement Security Week. I have another question. Will Your Whole Story continue into next year and beyond, or will there be a new theme going forward? We don't know the answer to that question yet. The Participant Engagement Committee is working on ideas for 2018, and my best guess is that it may be a different campaign, but it's not determined at this point. And with that, I'm not, any other questions?
I see one other question. It says, I'm just curious how NARP as a 501c3 raised funds.
So that's from me. So NARP, we're completely independent and self-sustaining. So NARP does consulting projects. People pay us consulting fees on things like behavioral finance, and those monies go into supporting all of the work that we do in terms of providing independent information and education to people. And we also do studies in the industry that look at a lot of the behavioral impact, behavioral factors around retirement savings. We do a big study every year that looks at savers, so 5,000 participants and non-participants. And the data that we generate from those studies, we license, and we use those licensing fees to help us fund our nonprofit activities. And all of that information, because we're a 501c3, is available as a public record. You can look and see where all of our funding sources come from. So we're not part of an arm of any other organization. We're completely independent.
Okay, and so I see another question. How can we become more involved in supporting this campaign throughout the year? Great question. I think one thing is to use the campaign, and it does lend itself towards use throughout the year, not just during the specific week. And then also from time to time, we send out surveys, and especially after the event, NAGDA sends out surveys, and we're trying to gauge how much involvement there was and get some metrics about what the results were. So answering our surveys really helps us a lot, as well as if you have any suggestions or requests or thoughts. I very much welcome the opportunity to talk with you and just dialogue about how we can evolve this into even bigger impact. So Tracy, anything to add there?
No, I think that covers it.
Okay.
And I don't see any other questions at this point.
Okay. Well, I want to thank everyone for participating today. I think we had over 120 participants, and so that's awesome. I do want to give, and I want to thank Lori for taking the time and sharing all of her background information for us today and all of the behavioral finance underpinnings of the campaign. It really is helpful to me, I know, to understand kind of why we're doing things the way that they are and what the results are that we can expect from that. So thanks very much, Lori, and to everyone at NARP. And a special shout out to the firms that sponsored National Retirement Security Week, this initiative where NAGDA's been developing and delivering the campaign for everyone to use. It's been kind of a new effort, and we needed some sponsorships, and the firms that did that have been really, really key in our success. And I also want to just point out that if there's any other organizations that still want to sponsor National Retirement Security Week for 2017-2018, you can still do that, and you can feel free to reach out to Tracy Tucker or myself. And again, thanks to everyone for participating, and stay tuned. We'll be sending out a couple of follow-up responses as a result of some of the questions that were asked. So have a great
Thanks, Polly.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Have a great day, everyone.